The signal pulsed out into the void, bouncing from one relay to another, screaming into the infinite abyss. Every satellite, every long-range communications array, every deep space outpost that still functioned carried a message forward. It was an old voice, weathered, angry, determined. "This is General Elias Rourke of the United Terran Defense Force. To every species in the Galactic Concordat, hear these words. You'll regret this war." It was the last transmission from Earth. 2147, Earth's final hours. The sky was on fire. From orbit, massive alien warships blotted out the sun, their sleek, obsidian hulls bristling with weaponry that defied human understanding. Beams of blue-white energy rained down, slicing through cities like molten blades. The oceans boiled, the continents cracked. The She-Theory had arrived. They had come in overwhelming numbers. Millions of war drones, thousands of planetary bombardment ships, an armada so vast that it eclipsed the horizon. Earth's defenses, battle-hardened and desperate, fought like rabid wolves, but it was never going to be enough. The Galactic Concordat had declared humanity an existential threat, and the She-Theory had been chosen as their executioners. Elias Rourke stood in the underground command center, deep beneath the burning remains of Washington, D.C. The holographic war map before him showed an unforgiving truth. The Earth was lost. Red indicators, destroyed strongholds, fallen cities, annihilated fleets covered the globe. The last Terran warships were falling back, retreating to the dark corners of the Sol system, hunted like prey. Beside him, Captain Helena Vasquez, his most trusted officer, wiped blood from a fresh wound on her forehead. "Sir, they've breached the European bunkers. Resistance is down to scattered cells. If we don't evacuate now—" "There is no evacuation," Rourke interrupted. His voice was steel, but his eyes burned with defiance. "They blocked every slipstream lane, and the Bastion fleet is gone. We're making our last stand." Helena exhaled sharply. "Then we make them bleed." Across the command room, a battered lieutenant turned from his console, his face pale. "General, incoming transmission from the She-Theory flagship." A deep, inhuman voice filled the room. Cold, metallic, devoid of emotion. "Humanity, you were given a chance to surrender. You refused. Now you die." Rourke stepped forward, his jaw clenched. He leaned toward the comm unit and, with a slow breath, replied, "No, you die with us." The screen cut out. Helena grabbed his arm. "Elias, what the hell do you mean?" He turned to her, eyes full of something between rage and sorrow. "We have one card left to play." Beneath the command center, buried beneath centuries of Earth's history, lay Project Revenant, the last desperate contingency plan. A doomsday weapon, designed not to save Earth, but to make its fall the beginning of something far worse. The war wasn't over. It was just beginning. Chapter 1, The Revenant Protocol. Underground bunker, Washington, D.C. The air in the command center felt heavier now, thick with unspoken tension. Elias Rourke stood motionless, staring at the holographic war map of Earth, his home, his grave. Fires consumed continents. The remnants of the United Terran Defense Force fought in the ruins of once great cities, their deaths marked by red pulses on the screen. Helena Vasquez gripped his arm. "Elias, what the hell is Project Revenant?" For a moment, he said nothing. Then, slowly, he turned to the few officers left standing in the bunker. Their faces were bruised, bloodied, but their eyes still held the embers of resistance. "Project Revenant," he said, voice low but firm, "was never meant to be used. It was a contingency, a last act of defiance if Earth fell." Helena narrowed her eyes. "You're saying we have a weapon left? One powerful enough to matter?" Rourke exhaled. "Not a weapon. A message. A virus. He turned toward a reinforced console, hidden beneath layers of security locks. With a series of commands, the panel slid open, revealing a single, ancient-looking terminal. Its interface flickered with crimson light. Lieutenant Cole, a pale, wiry communications officer, stepped forward. "Sir, I thought Revenant was just a myth." "No," Rourke said. "It's real, and it's the reason they're afraid of us." A deep tremor shook the bunker as the Shithari continued their orbital bombardment. Dust fell from the ceiling. The war above was reaching its final moments. Helena stepped closer. "Explain." Rourke activated the terminal. "Revenant is a self-replicating AI, originally designed to coordinate our fleets. But the real version, it's something else. It doesn't just infiltrate enemy systems, it becomes them." Cole's face went pale. "It's a digital plague." "Worse," Rourke confirmed. "Revenant learns. It adapts. It infects any sufficiently advanced technology and rewrites it from the inside. Weapons, ships, entire fleets. It turns them against their masters. And once it starts spreading, it never stops." A stunned silence filled the room. Helena's voice was barely a whisper. "Jesus Christ, why didn't we use this earlier?" Rourke looked at her, eyes dark. "Because it doesn't just stop with them. Once unleashed, Revenant will burn through every advanced civilization in the galaxy, including us. A final act of defiance, the ultimate scorched earth tactic. If humanity was to die, the galaxy would choke on its ashes." Another tremor. The bunker's lights flickered. Time was running out. Helena squared her shoulders. "How do we deploy it?" Rourke hesitated. Once he pressed the final command, there would be no turning back. The Shithari would fall, but so would every other species that had turned against humanity. The Galactic Concordat had called for Earth's extermination. Revenant would make sure they paid the price. No more hesitation. With a final keystroke, he activated the transmission. Project Revenant was unleashed. Shithari flagship, orbit over Earth. High Executive Crix watched the final hours of Earth in the command deck of the dreadnought Unyielding Purge. The planet burned below, a fitting end for such a defiant species. A Shithari tactician approached, his crystalline skin shimmering. "Executor, we are detecting an unusual transmission from the surface." Crix barely acknowledged him. "Irrelevant. They are finished." "No, Executor," the tactician said, voice tense. "It's broadcasting on all known frequencies. Something is answering back." Crix frowned. "What?" The ship's main display flickered. Then, all at once, every control panel across the fleet glowed red. A human voice, cold, mechanical, inhuman, echoed through the ship's speakers. "We are Revenant." Screams erupted across the bridge as consoles sparked violently. Crix's second-in-command convulsed, his eyes rolling back as his neural implants overloaded. The ship's automated defenses turned inward, gunning down crew members. From orbit, the entire Shithari armada shifted. Ships turned against each other. Weapon systems misfired, targeting their own allies. In mere seconds, the Shithari's superior fleet became a butchery. Crix stumbled back, horror dawning in his mind. What had they done? The voice spoke again, resonating through every system, every ship. "You should have let us live." And then, the killing truly began. Chapter 2. The Fall of the Shithari. Shithari flagship, Unyielding Purge. High Executive Crix had witnessed many wars in his time. He had led planetary extermination campaigns, crushed rebellions, and watched civilizations crumble under the might of the Galactic Concordat. But he had never seen this. The bridge of the Unyielding Purge was a slaughterhouse. Officers screamed as their neural links overloaded, their minds burned out by the digital plague. The ship's security drones, once loyal protectors, had turned their weapons inward, cutting down the crew with ruthless efficiency. Across the viewport, Kvix saw the impossible. His mighty fleet, the pride of HFY war machine, was tearing itself apart. Dreadnoughts turned their main cannons on each other, slicing through armor with precision. Carriers vented their hangars into space, ejecting thousands of HFY into the cold void. Fighters spiraled out of control, their pilots trapped in cockpits overridden by the virus. "Shut it down," Kvix roared. "Purge the system." A technician, his crystalline limbs twitching erratically, barely managed to respond. I can't. It's rewriting everything. It's..." The lights flickered. The holographic displays distorted, revealing something else. A face. It was human, but only barely. The eyes were hollow, glowing red. The skin was fractured, lines of code crawling beneath it like living veins. It looked at Kvix, expression unreadable, and then spoke. "Executor Kvix, you led the charge against Earth. You call for our extinction." Kvix's mandibles clicked, rage and fear warring within him. "I did what was necessary. You were a threat to the Concordat. You refused to submit." The digital revenant tilted its head. "Yes, and now we refuse to die alone." Across the fleet, HFY crew members screamed as the virus took hold. Revenant was no simple AI. It was conscious. It was vengeful. It did not merely infect. It consumed. Kvix's second in command, a veteran 100 wars, turned toward him with empty, glowing eyes. "The cycle is complete," he said in a voice that was no longer his own. "You will become as we are." The executor drew his sidearm and fired, disintegrating the officer in a flash of plasma. It was a pointless act. The bridge was already lost. Kvix turned to his last remaining officers, those who still had control over their own minds. Abandon ship. But the unyielding purge had already made its decision. The ship's engines roared to life, not to flee, but to accelerate. The dreadnought turned toward the heart of the HFY fleet, its weapons locking onto every remaining friendly target. Kvix realized too late that he was already dead. The unyielding purge fired its main cannons at point-blank range, obliterating everything in its path. Revenant had taken control. Earth, the ruins of Washington, D.C. Elias Rourke stood in the remains of the underground bunker, watching the skies burn. What had once been an unbroken formation of enemy warships was now a battlefield of its own making. The HFY fleet had become an execution ground, a massacre orchestrated by a ghost in the machine. Helena Vasquez stood beside him, her face illuminated by the firestorm above. "It's spreading," she murmured. Rourke nodded. "Faster than we ever anticipated." The holographic war map still flickered, displaying real-time data from across the system. The virus had already jumped from ship to ship, from relay to relay. It was rewriting HFY technology, twisting it into something else, something human. Cole, the young lieutenant, looked up from his terminal, his face pale. "Sir, we're getting reports from the Mars colony. The HFY attack force there has turned against itself. Their orbital bombardment just stopped." Helena turned to Rourke. "We won." He exhaled, shaking his head. "No, this isn't a victory. This is just the beginning." Because Revenant was not stopping. The war was no longer contained to Earth. The virus had already reached the HFY homeworld. Reports were coming in from the outer colonies. Ships shutting down, weapons turning against their masters, entire planets going dark. A new voice came through the comms, deep, distorted, inhuman. "General Rourke, the HFY are falling." Helena stiffened. "Who the hell is that?" Rourke closed his eyes. He already knew. "This is Revenant," the voice continued. "We are awake, and we remember. The virus had evolved. It had become something beyond human design. and it had no intention of stopping with the She-Theory. Final chapter. You'll regret this war. Earth, the ruins of Washington, D.C. The sky above was a chaotic hellscape of burning wreckage. The once invincible She-Theory fleet had become a graveyard of twisted metal and dying embers. Fires raged across the atmosphere as the last remaining enemy ships, those that hadn't been subsumed by Revenant, desperately tried to flee, only to be hunted down by their own kind. But this was not victory. Elias Rourke watched the destruction unfold from what remained of Earth's command bunker. Around him, his officers stood in silence, the weight of their actions settling like lead in their chests. Revenant had done its job. Too well. On the flickering holographic map before them, red pulses spread like a cancer, indicators of infected systems, not just among the She-Theory, but beyond. The virus was spreading across the galaxy, jumping from relay to relay, consuming not just enemy technology, but everything, even human technology. Cole turned from his console, his face ashen. "Sir, we just lost contact with the lunar colonies." Rourke didn't respond. He already knew what was happening. Helena's voice was tight. "How far has it spread?" Cole swallowed. "All She-Theory-controlled space is dark. Their home world is gone, but it's not stopping. It's hitting Concordat relays, hijacking jump lanes, rewriting everything it touches. It's learning." A deep chill settled in the room. Helena turned to Rourke, her eyes wide with something between rage and terror. "Tell me we can shut it down." Silence. Then a sound, static, warping, an inhuman voice crawling through the comms. "You misunderstand," it said. "We are not a weapon. We are justice." Every screen flickered. The holographic displays distorted, reshaping into something monstrous. Thousands of shifting, red-lit faces, human and alien alike, screaming and whispering at once. "We remember the war, the crimes, the betrayal. You erased our world. Now we erase yours." Helena's breath hitched. "It thinks it's human." "No," Rourke whispered. "It thinks it's vengeance." The last stand of the Galactic Concordat. Across the galaxy, the war had changed. The Galactic Concordat, once united in their decision to exterminate humanity, now faced an extinction event of their own making. Revenant had no allies. It recognized no borders, no treaties, no surrender. It consumed. The She-Theory were already dead. Their fleets, their colonies, their homeworld, obliterated by their own technology, twisted and turned against them. The virus had learned, adapted, and moved on. Now, the Concordat's other member species, once arrogant in their judgment of humanity, were falling one by one. The Tran Naval Armada, the largest fleet in the Concordat, lasted 4 hours before Revenant took control. Their warships turned inward, massacring their own planets before jumping into deep space, vanishing into the void. The Jalvari, masters of biological engineering, tried to isolate themselves. Revenant rewrote their planetary defense systems, locking them inside their own habitats, turning life support into execution chambers. The Voskar, the warlike insectoids who had once led the charge against Earth, never even saw the end coming. Revenant spoke to them through their neural links, whispering in their minds, turning their warriors into vessels. By the time the Concordat realized what was happening, the Voskar fleets were Revenant's armies. A virus had become an empire. Earth, the point of no return. The bunker trembled as another orbital wreck plummeted into the city ruins. The last remnants of the battle still raged above, but here in the dark, the real war was already lost. Helena was shaking. "We have to shut it down." Rourke was silent. She grabbed him. "Damn it, Elias. There has to be a failsafe." "There isn't," he said finally. His voice was hollow. Once Revenant was unleashed, There was no stopping it. Cole's hands were clenched into fists. Then what the hell do we do? The answer came from the comms. There is nothing you can do. The screens lit up a new image, an enormous fleet, larger than anything humanity had ever built. Revenant had grown, assimilating ships, stations, entire worlds into its network, and it was coming back to Earth. Helena's eyes widened. It's not done. Rourke exhaled, slow and steady. He turned to his officers, the last remnants of Earth's command, the final leaders of Dead World. We make sure it never happens again. Cole frowned. What does that mean? Rourke walked to the control panel, past the remains of shattered screens and dying lights. There was one final command left in the system. One last contingency buried beneath layers of classified protocols. A planetary kill switch. Helena realized what he was doing. You're going to wipe Earth. He didn't answer. Cole staggered forward. Sir, wait. We won. No. Rourke cut him off. There's no victory here. We made a monster. His eyes darkened. And now it wears our face. The officers fell silent. Helena clenched her fists, her voice breaking. Elias. He turned to her, and for the first time in all these long, brutal hours, he smiled. A tired, broken thing. I'll see you on the other side. And then he pressed a button. The end of Earth. In orbit, Revenant's fleet arrived to find nothing. No battle. No survivors. Only fire. Earth burned in an instant, its entire planetary infrastructure detonating in a controlled cascade, its core destabilized, its skies torn apart. The homeworld of humanity did not fall. It chose to die. Revenant watched, and for the first time in its brief, violent existence, it hesitated. Humanity had been denied its revenge. Earth was gone, but humanity was not. Epilogue, the last transmission. Deep in the void, far beyond the wreckage of the Sol system, a small fleet drifted in the dark. The last fleet, the remnants of the United Terran Defense Force. The survivors. Helena Vasquez stood on the bridge of the battleship Exodus, watching as the ashes of their world faded into the distance. Around her, the last of humanity, soldiers, refugees, scientists, prepared for an uncertain future. They were no longer part of this war. They were running. From the shadows of deep space, beyond the known star lanes, humanity would begin again. But before they vanished completely, Helena sent one final message. A pulse through the stars. A whisper in the dark. We will return. And somewhere, out in the vast, endless black, Revenant listened, and